it's not, guys, it's not that one is not receptive to the question. It's a strange question that, I mean, I never hear white writers being asked, do you feel weird about representing white people? Does your representation of white people, don't you think that that's deeply troubling? And what's really interesting is that how, as people of color, we're under this really unfair burden that we're supposed to be somehow the hyper-representation. And we, even amongst ourselves, duplicate that. We're so unused to seeing ourselves in books that we assume a book that's written about an incredibly specific Dominican family. I'm sorry, like, this family goes out of its way to distinguish themselves. The family is elite. From its history, it is an elite family who suffers tremendously under the dictatorship. It is a middle-class Dominican family. 90% of Dominicans I know didn't put their kids in fucking private school. And 90% of Dominicans I know don't own fucking houses. You know, so this is a family that is a middle-class Dominican family who all its kids go to college. Last time I know, most of the Dominican kids, I didn't grow up with that. I was like the first person in my hood who was like, oh, I think I'm gonna go to college. I'm like, all right, dork. And so when I'm thinking about how is this family, how are we reading this family as some sort of stand-in for every Dominican family? Can it be? That would not be up to me. Who a reader decides to identify with and who a reader decides to feel solidarity with is not something that the writer has a hand in. You guys love fucking books about vampires and shit. There ain't no such fucking thing as a vampire. And yet you're able to connect really powerfully. Some of you be fucking freaking out on Game of Thrones. That shit doesn't exist. But you've got no problems feeling like, yeah, Stannis is my man. And so for me, the question would be, what about these very specific characters in the book would lead someone to think that I'm making an argument that these people are a stand-in for all Dominicans. Now, what's really important to know is that if you belong to a community of color, communities of color like to self-exotify. Community of color like to say, well, all we black folks do this. We all like to say, oh, that's some Dominican shit. Even if we haven't met more than 1% of Dominicans. And simply representing that habit inside of a community doesn't mean you endorse it. Right? So if my Dominican characters are saying something about Dominicans, guys, that's just representation. You have to bring yourself into the book in a deeper way and ask what is the book arguing? When I think about who my audience is, yeah, I think that that's, for me, kind of a straightforward question. Yeah, I always, in my head, when I'm writing my book, I always think, I want my 6 best friends to feel this book. Yeah, are they predominantly Dominican? Yep. When I think of my audience, I'm like, I want the Dominican diaspora in all its diversity. I want folks from that diaspora to find something in the book to be in conversation with. All Dominicans? No, that's impossible. I'm writing a book. It's not a religion. A religion can be for all souls, but a book isn't. A book isn't meant for everybody. I mean, that's why we have so many books. You don't like my book? That's dope. Find one you do like. And that's normal. You know? So I think of it in those terms, you know? I think of it in those terms. I mean, I think that what is really, really important for us is that even if people are different from us, we can feel connected to them. I want people to feel connected to my characters even across the span of time and space. And I know a lot of Dominicans who are not middle class, who didn't send their kids to private school and connect to this literature very strongly. And the question is that about Dominicanness? the fact that the characters are speaking to them on a deeper level. It's hard to know. It's hard to know. You know? But I don't lose any sleep about representing the Dominican community because I don't have characters who are called the Dominican man. The Dominican man says, or the Dominican woman. I'm really trying to do art about a specific group. And what's really great is by the more specific you get, the more likely you are to get universal. You will have universal effects in your work by carving a very specific, narrow humanity. The broader you are, the less likely you are to be universal. You know? So I mean, that's what I'm thinking about. I mean, is that some kind of answer? Do you have a follow-up question? I feel you're...
I always look like I don't have a question, but it's fine.
Yeah, don't worry, my mother's like, you always look dumb to me. That's an improvement.
All day.
Okay, just making sure.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go.